13. Oh, it says call back and it should be claw back. Thanks.
Thank you.
All right, any other comments or any other questions? Otherwise, I would entertain a motion.
I need to, oh, go ahead.
Motion to approve.
The first from Counselor Melton,
Second.
second from Counselor Sampson. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Motion passes 6 in favor, 0 opposed. Up next is the November approval of the November 2024 payroll claims. Are there questions from counselors? Otherwise, I would entertain a motion.
Move to approve.
First from Counselor McElderry,
Second.
a second from Counselor Stein. All those in favor signify by saying aye. All those opposed, same sign. Motion passes 6 in favor, 0 opposed. Moving along to the next item, which is the approval of the December 2nd, 2024 claims. Are there questions from counselors? If not, I would entertain a motion.
Move to approve.
First from Counselor Norris,
Second.
second from Counselor Sampson. All those in favor signify by saying aye. All those opposed, same sign. Motion passes 6 in favor, 0 opposed. Up next, we have the swearing in of new fire engineers, Matt Conyer, Andrew Phelps, and Dustin Campins, and we have Chief Van Gorder here and Mayor Stair.
Thank you, Mr. Whoa, that is a hot mic. Thank you, Mr. President, members of the council. Excited to be here before you this evening as the Zionsville Fire Department continues to grow. Also super excited to have the mayor be with us as he understands the importance of these moments as our firefighters take the oath, and not only before their family, but before our community. This evening, we have 3 individuals who are moving up in their career, and I'm honored to have them here. We'll do these one at a time. Family members, please feel free to step forward and take pictures of them as you would like. At this time, I'd like to have firefighter Dustin Campins come forward and his wife Jackie, who will be pinning his badge on, and Mayor Stair will administer the oath of office.
This is what they do, we're supportive of one another, and that's one of the things that partner trade makes our town great. So, Dustin Campbell is going to be sworn in as an. I, Dustin Campbell, do solemnly swear my duties in the position that
Our next firefighter to come forward this evening is Matt Coiner, and his son Cash will be pinning his badge on.
raise your right hand. I, Matt Coiner, do solemnly swear
Do solemnly swear
that I will support
that I will support
the Constitution of the United States, Constitution of the State of Indiana,
the Constitution of the State of Indiana
ordinances of the town of Zionsville, Indiana,
and the ordinance
honestly
honestly
and impartially
and impartially
discharge all my official duties
discharge all of my official duties
regardless of the race,
regardless of the race,
creed,
creed,
color,
color,
religion,
religion,
sex,
sex,
or national origin,
or national origin,
And our third firefighter this evening being meritoriously promoted to engineer is Andrew Phelps. If he'd please come forward, and his wife Julie will be pinning his badge.
right hand. And repeat after me. I, Andrew Phelps,
I, Andrew Phelps,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
I will support
that I will support
the Constitution of the United States, Constitution of the State of Indiana,
the Constitution of the State of Indiana,
I will faithfully,
I will faithfully,
honestly,
honestly,
and impartially
and impartially
discharge all my official duties
discharge all my official duties
in the position of
for
Zionsville,
the town of Zionsville,
regardless of the race,
regardless of the race,
creed,
creed,
color,
color,
religion,
religion,
sex,
sex,
or national origin
or national origin
of the persons I serve. Thank you. Appreciate your service.
All right. I would echo Chief Van Gorder's comments about how special it is to have everybody here. It's always nice when we're able to have that in our council meetings. So I will also allow all of you guys to leave, so you don't have to wait for the rest of it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
All right. While they're walking out, we'll move on to requests to speak. I've got 3 requests to speak on agenda items. The first one we have is Becky Cash. The second one we have is Tom Easterday, and the last one we have is it Lauren McNamara? Am I saying that correct? Perfect. So if you would please, when you come up, just state your name and your address for the record, and then I'll start your timer. You'll have 3 minutes. I'll let you know after 2 minutes goes by that you've got 1 left. And yeah, I won't start the timer till after you're done with your address.
Thank you. Becky Cash, 6530 Yorkshire Circle, Zionsville, 46077. So I'm here to speak on behalf of the disability ordinance, which will be presented later this evening. My name is Becky Cash. I'm speaking to you this evening as a Zionsville resident and a parent of children and young adults with different abilities and disabilities. I want to thank former Deputy Mayor Kate Swanson for helping to get this discussion around a disability committee going, though I know it's been a discussion that many of us have asked for many years. I also would like to thank Deputy Mayor Haig for jumping in and continuing a much-needed discussion and for bringing the plan to this point. I know that there have been many staff members, community members who have all given input, and I thank each of you wherever you are. I don't know who all of you are. So I've read the proposed ordinance, sent it to other members of the community and have gained some feedback that I wish to share. Reading the ordinance, there are 5 voting members of the committee that are being proposed. There are multiple categories where those members can come from. It appears to be feasible that the committee could ultimately have no people with disabilities representing the town on the committee because there's a list of different categories they could come from. I know the intention is to have that, but 5-10 years down the road, who knows what might happen. I would like to propose that a minimum number of people with disabilities be required to be on the committee. I assume that there will be no shortage of people. Well, I assure you, there will definitely be no shortage of people to take these spots. So I understand that the members are appointed. I would like to suggest that there be an ability for members of the community to apply to fill the spots as they become available. So reading through the ordinance, I don't see any way for people to actually turn in an application that if a spot becomes available, that they could be considered. So it's impossible for all of us to know all the people in the community with different abilities. If a current option to fill the spot should be dropped, I would suggest that we may need an employable person. I'm sorry, let me back up. On it, one of the areas that the committee could be filled with is an employer of people with disabilities. If we need to drop one of the categories that the committee could be filled with, I would suggest that that might be the person to drop. It's nice to have somebody who employs people with disabilities, but we need people with disabilities. People with disabilities can speak for themselves if they're looking for employment. My perspectives come both from being a parent, but also from seeing committees filled with professionals as opposed to those with lived experiences and their parents who have a very different lived experience. Again, I thank you all for your time and all that you're doing. Thank you.
All right, up next, we have Tom Easterday. Okay, so Mr. Easterday, for the record, will be presenting the ordinance, so he's withdrawn his request to speak. Up next, we have Lauren McNamara.
Lauren McNamara, 6527 Hunters Ridge North, Zionsville, Indiana, 46077. Hello, my name is Lauren McNamara. I'm the CEO of a digital accessibility and neurodiversity company here in Zionsville, and I am also a person with disabilities. Having read through the disability ordinance as written, my concern is that there is no protection to ensure that people with disabilities are actually able to hold these seats. In truth, any disability council should be 100% people with disabilities. I'd like to offer 4 reasons for this. 1, marginalized groups need to be able to speak for themselves. Historically, when others have represented our interests, terrible things have happened. Well-meaning people make mistakes out of ignorance, and ill-meaning people jump at an opportunity to gain access to and authority over vulnerable populations. Reason 2, which I'm going to actually start with a little story. When I started my company, I started through a technical incubator program where we were able to present our businesses to investors. One investor, as soon as he entered the room, beelined it to our table, and we thought, wow, this guy really wants to be involved in our company by and for people with disabilities. As soon as he opened his mouth, his question was, so how much money can I save, and therefore how much profit can I make by paying these people less because they have disabilities? How can we ensure with this ordinance as written that people like that are not on this council? Too many times, I and others have seen groups like this co-opted by opportunism. This can be avoided by setting a firm line that council is both by and for people with disabilities. It's a place reserved for our voices to be heard. Able-bodied people have every other platform at their disposal to contribute feedback from their position of expertise. They do not need even one of these few seats available to underrepresented populations. Reason 3. Parents, caregivers, and professionals in the field can all contribute and have great voices to do so, but they can do so without seats by offering their perspectives when invited by the council or as community contributors attending every time if they'd like. But in the end, it should be people with disabilities themselves that decide what information that's provided through these avenues is valid for submission as a disability council recommendation. Number 4, every seat is necessary to ensure as much diversity of people with disabilities experience is represented. There are 5 categories of people with disabilities: cognitive disabilities that affect thinking, sensory that affect senses, metabolic that affect how much energy you have in a day, motor disabilities that affect your movement, and speaking disabilities that affect your ability to communicate. These are all very different experiences and with them very different needs. Without enough reserve seats, it's unlikely that this council will be able to represent even a small fraction of these experiences. As an accessibility professional and as someone with disabilities, I recommend that either all seats be reserved for people with disabilities, or that at least 5 seats are reserved for people with disabilities, and that in either case, every effort is made to represent the widest diversity of disability experience possible. I recommend that business owners, nonprofit workers, and caregivers be invited to participate, but as community contributors at the pleasure of the council members, so long as they deem their contributions fruitful.
Thank you, Lauren.
Thank you.
Right on time. All right. Up next on the agenda, we have the mayor and administration update. We have Mayor Stair with us.
Good evening, everyone. Very quickly, I want to, off the top, congratulate the Boys and Girls Club for the 9th annual Z Gravy Chase on Thanksgiving morning. It was a fantastic event, nearly 4,000 people on the bricks, raising almost $200,000 for the club. So it was a wonderful experience, I think, for pretty much everybody who was there. Also, the Chamber of Commerce for another successful Santa Claus parade, and a reminder that Christmas in the Village is underway. I hope many people will come out and support our local businesses throughout the month. And just a reminder, 23 days now left until Christmas. So next up is the year-end report for the Redevelopment Commission, as well as the group's 2025 budget. And RDC President David Ober is here to present that.
Mayor, and good evening, Mr. President, members of the council. I just want to give you a brief kind of update on what the RDC has been up to this year. We'll start with Creekside. You may have seen lots of activity in Creekside. We currently have a number of lots that are ready to close or in some part of the process of preparing to close. The first tier that I'll share with you is lots 4 and 5 with some section of lot 3 that's being replatted to host the Center for Sight or Fru's Vision. This is a relocation of a eye surgery center that is currently in Carmel. They're going to be moving to Zionsville, and we plan to close in the next several weeks with them. And please feel free to interrupt with any questions that you may have.
Is number 3 then therefore no longer going to be marketed to be sold? Or I know we talked about drainage.
Yes, it will be continue to be marketed. It'll be a different layout, and so it'll be reduced acreage. We'll have that site it'll be appraised, so we'll have an updated value. As with all of the other open lots in Creekside, we're in the process of having them reappraised. The last appraisal was done in 20 or 21, so we'll have updated market values for those sites as we continue to market.
Feel like the appraisal amount will go up as we fill, or do you?
I believe so. Lot 3 may, because of that little sliver that's being replatted into the other 2 lots, it may lower the appraised value of the site. But the site will become more condensed, and certainly lots 4 and 5, the new lots 4 and 5 will be a little bit easier. As you can see from the diagram, the section that's being added to the other 2 lots is not meaningful, and it'll allow that site to be expanded down the line, which is currently on their plan.
Okay.
Next is lots 7 and 8. We expect a closing in the early part of 2025. This is Exclusive Auto Sports. So this is a Canadian company. The owners have moved to Zionsville, and it's kind of like the development league of IndyCar and stock car racing. And we have an executed development agreement and are moving towards close on lots 7 and 8. The most recent transaction, and this one will actually close before the end of the year as well, is Kreider and Kreider. This is a company that is currently based in Bloomington. The owner lives in Zionsville and is hopeful that at some point in the future to move the entire operation from Bloomington to Indianapolis. They originally were interested in lot 1 and did some clearing. So if you've been through Creekside recently, they've cleared through some invasive species on lot 1 and lot 2. So it's a little bit more visible what's happening in those areas of Creekside. They started to do some investigation of the lot for development and realized that lot 2 was actually a better fit for them. And so we are well along our way. We have an executed development agreement and, like I mentioned, plan to close before the end of the year. I will briefly give an update on lot 9. We did have an accepted letter of interest on lot 9, and we learned today that project is not going to be moving forward, or we're still in the process of working through some detail on that. So it's I removed it from the slides because it's still premature, but we're still hopeful that we'll be able to get an executed development agreement before the end of the year and potentially close on that in the first half of 2025. But we're working through detail on impact fees and some other items with that. What's in the pipeline for 2025 beyond what's in Creekside? We have the lot that's just directly in front of Town Hall. We're calling it Lot 2. We issued a request for information in June of last year, and we received responses. Many of you on council have been a part of conversations through some of the proposals that were received. We're continuing conversation with Seek, which is the entity that owns the office building on the other side. I will call it Lot 1, about a similar style office building in that location. And now is a really good time for council members to engage in the process of what that should look like and how it should be structured. Really just the RDC has been trying to collect as many ideas about the possibilities there. The town and not the RDC does own the property. And so we've just been convening groups and collecting information as that project moves forward. We created a new economic development area and allocation area this year for Wild Air and Old Town companies. This project is moving forward. It's 100% pledge. My understanding is that the bond issue has already gone out. You can see if you drive down Marysville Road that this project, they're taking down the side and they've begun the work of these two areas. What's contemplated here is some commercial and multifamily in the northern part of this area, and then just directly south is going to be a senior living development. And then it's not in the orange area, but down below is the intended location for the civic use that has been included as part of the project, approximately 10 acres. I should mention that's a developer-backed bond. So and it's 100% pledge. So as Old Town Companies starts to build out the area, they'll submit to the RDC for reimbursement on qualifying expenditures. And that's how the funds will go back and forth. But it's a complete pass through. The increment will pass through the RDC to the developer as they submit items for reimbursement. A little bit different. Instead of creating a new economic development area, we expanded the economic development area that is Holiday Farms to include the area that is directly across from where the farmhouse is, where the Kiddie Academy and the Starbucks is being constructed. So the inner lots there is the Century development. This is going to be another senior living development. This is a 90-10 split, so the RDC and the town retain 10% of the TIF revenues, with the 90% being pledged. It's also a developer-backed bond. And you can see a part of this, the structure of this deal was a contribution to extend the pedestrian walk path between Appaloosa Crossing and Willow Road. So fully connecting all of the neighborhoods along the northeast part of 421 into town. The most recent project that has come before the RDC is, and happened just last week, is the farm phase 2. So phase 1 is being constructed, you can see, and they're starting to move dirt and do things for the second phase. When this project was approved, which precedes my time on the RDC, it was 2 phases. The first phase was a 95-5 split. The second phase was a 50-50 split, with the idea being that you would approximate a 75-25 split across both phases. And so that is what is moving forward. The pledge resolution and the taxpayer agreement was approved at our meeting last week. So activity will be highly visible throughout that area over the next over the coming months. And this is also a developer-backed bond, so they will complete the infrastructure and then submit qualifying expenses to be drawn down from the fund that the RDC is controlling. That's my last slide, but I will pause for any questions.
Could you share any plans for pedestrian crossings with the Holiday Farms development? Now, there's going to be more development on the east side. We've got more development coming in on the west side. I know there's been talk about some type of bridge, but that fell through, I guess, at some point. Any additional insights as to what we might be thinking about in terms of pedestrian crossing there?
I can't unfortunately add any further context than what you just described. As far as what was contemplated for that space, there is bonding capacity within the Holiday Farms EDA that I think was intended for a multitude of items. One of those being, sewer capacity. And then there was also some discussion about pedestrian access and the bridge. There's not been any movement this year on those discussions. But as development happens and as the pathway that is the contribution from the Century project starts to progress, I think that those conversations will start to move forward. Yep. I also have the 2025 budget for approval or for consideration questions. I won't go line by line. I'll just cover the highlights. 60% approximately of the funds that are collected in our allocation areas are direct pass-throughs. So these are developer-backed bonds or other bonds where the TIF revenues come in and they're immediately going out. The only expenditure is bond repayment. We do have items that in the Zionsville EDA that are pledged for bond payments, but also some capital projects and some other anticipated transactions this year, professional services related to projects in that area. You also see some ready grant matching that's included in there.
David, do we have to go to the RDC website for that? That's not in our packet.
I will make sure that you have
Is
that. It was my understanding that this was shared. I'm happy to share my copy to Amy if you'd like to.
Well, if it's on the website, we can track it down, but
It would have been a part of the October agenda items. Bottom of the agenda.
David, bouncing back real quick to Creekside, Intelligent Living, did they move forward or?
That's lot 9.
Okay, that's all I needed to know. I don't.
That's lot
Thank you.
9. Yeah.
Are there any other questions or anything for Mr. Ober? All right. Thank you very
Thank you.
much. Can we, Amy, when you get, if you get a digital copy of that, can you send that to us sometime this week?
Yes.
Thank you.
And as we come back to the administration update, I just wanted to take a moment to congratulate Dustin, Matt, and Andrew on their promotions to engineer in our fire department. I mean, these guys are really good guys. They represent our town really well. And we are fortunate to have them looking after us. So glad that we could all be a part of that tonight. Also, we have a new communications manager. I think we're also fortunate enough to have Alexa Ling on our staff. And since the last town council meeting, she has taken on the role of communications manager for the town. I think it's a well-deserved promotion for her. So we're still looking for a replacement for her, and I hope to have an announcement on that by the end of the year. In the meantime, Alexa will be doing double duty, so I want to thank her publicly for those efforts. She's working awfully hard as we end the year. The next item I have is the 2025 board and commission appointments. As we get closer to the end of the year, it's time for us to make those appointments. The council has 57, and not counting the Mayor's Youth Advisory Council, I have 35 positions to fill. And I want to tell you tonight and tell the public tonight that I will have my list to you at your next meeting so that we can get them on the record so they can step into their roles on January 1st without a delay. And that is all I have tonight. Is there any question or anything for me?
Those 35, those two numbers you just showed, those are rolling appointments. So you're not really appointing 35 new people. You're actually appointing
Correct.
just for the public.
I'm responsible for 35. You're responsible, by my count, you're responsible for
Overall.
57. Yeah.
But some of them are still,
Some of them are still in midterm.
yeah.
Yeah. That's what I
Yes.
wanted to make clear.
Yeah, I mean, I think we have a handful, maybe a little more than that to do. I mean, as it relates to
Yeah.
ours, because most of ours are multiple year appointments, but. All right, any other questions for the mayor? Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, up next on the agenda is old business, and we have no old business items. So the first item up on new business is a consideration of an ordinance changing the name of the Pizzazz Committee to the Tree Board. This is ordinance 2024-41. This is a first reading, and we have Heather and Counselor McElderry to present if there are any questions. So. I'll just say
Go ahead, Heather.
yeah, I mean, this is something that he's brought to our attention, a while back. So Heather.
Yeah, so I'll turn it over to Council McElderry. These are very nice new mics. So the only change is changing the name from Pizzazz to the Tree Board. We already are a designated tree board for this committee for the Arbor Day Foundation, which is originally why this was established. And I know that Council McElderry, you serve on that. I don't know if you want to provide any additional commentary at this time.
We do have some members of the Pizzazz, soon to be Zionsville Tree Board here with us. And so correct me if I'm wrong, but the primary reason behind the name change is number one, a lot of people don't know what the people of Zionsville for the aesthetics of Zionsville is about. Many people think it's a dance club or dance crew, but we're not. And so part of it is just simply clarity. The other part is that National Arbor Day, which designates us as a tree city, recommends that we have the name of Tree Board. So it's really no more complicated than that. Anything, Greta, that you'd want to step to the mic? Okay. So that's
Is
pretty
that
much
all
it.
you do? Is just the tree preservation and replacement and tree of the year? Or is there any other manner that you do that should be like aesthetic wise that should be included in the name so that it would be the something and tree board? Or do you truly just do trees? Because I think that we don't want to jump from one name to another if there's.
Well, I mean, I think this was established by the Arbor part with the Arbor Board,
Yes,
Arbor Commission. So
for the
that's-
Arbor Day Foundation designation. The other thing I would say is there will be some recommendations on other flora and fauna. And I know that this group has been working with the Department of Public Works to make some recommendations. We're not ready for that yet. That conversation's still continuing. So we may have some additional updates to this ordinance maybe in the first, half of next year. But we wanted to make sure prior to the appointments that we were making, that we went ahead and changed the name so that individuals are being appointed to the entity that is preferred by the Arbor Day Foundation as well as the committee itself.
So that everyone knows they're getting on a tree board versus a pizzazz board.
Yeah, and to answer your question, really, it is about the trees. Both invasive species, trying to keep them out, and preferred species. But from an aesthetic standpoint, no, we don't, there's not anything that Pizzazz does outside of recommendations around trees.
Any questions for Counselor McElderry or Heather? I would point out this is an ordinance. This is a first reading. I would also like to just address the pizzazz and future tree board. Appreciate your patience on this. I know this has been something that you guys have wanted for a while, and it just seemed like it was something to be, after we did our due diligence, found out what we should do or shouldn't do, and then get it on the agenda to clean up all the other ordinances like we're doing tonight. So I appreciate your patience on all of this. Yeah, if there are no other questions or comments, I would entertain a motion.
Yeah, I would move to approve, to introduce on first reading ordinance 2024-41.
Got a first from Counselor McElderry,
Second.
second from Counselor Stein. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Motion passes 6 in favor, 0 opposed. Up next is the consideration of an ordinance establishing the non-DLGF budget for 2025. This is ordinance 2024-42. We have Cindy Poor, Director of Finance and Records, to introduce.
Hello. So this budget, and you should have a copy in your packets, but this budget is made up and supported by fee-based revenue and not property tax. So we refer to it as the non-DLGF budget. Basically because since it is fee-based and no property taxes are utilized in this, it does not have to go before DLGF to be approved. This is a council approval for this budget. So I just wanted to point out a few things. The 2025 budget is approximately 12% lower than the 2024 budget. The main reason for that is for 24, we had ARPA dollars included, and we had a full golf course budget included. And so without those two, it did drop by 12%. The largest items that make up this budget are the wastewater operating. This budget carries a lot of the bonds, proceeds and payments, and trash fund and so forth. So, just a lot of other than the operating budget for wastewater, it's a lot of kind of miscellaneous things that we do still have to appropriate and create a budget for. Do you have any questions?
Yeah, I was actually, when I looked over this, I was reviewing it, thinking that it would help me for comparative wise to see things against the budget, or because I see the 2024 budget, I see the 2025, but if you could line this up next time where they go like next to each other, that would be better for me. If that's
Sure.
okay.
Mhm.
Especially when we're looking on our electronic, I start
Right.
flipping through. The golf course, I just wondered if, I don't remember what the contract said. Do we, have something that we're getting paid back for? Wasn't it like $50,000 where we're going to put in improvements? Is that happening still? Did we make that number?
So as far as, yeah, these mics are very.
I know it's very.
Sorry. I know that we're required to budget so much towards capital. They do capital projects, but we budget so much to help in those endeavors. They do pay us, you can break it down monthly or an annual amount of 50,000 or a percentage of the proceeds from the golf course, whichever is greater. And they do, right now, they're set up on the monthly that they've been paying us. As far as any of the other specifics, I would probably have to have Jared speak to those. So you will see that in this budget that there is a line item, a capital line item in here for the golf course.
Okay, what I had seen was the contractual services for, maybe I didn't see all of it, but I see 5,000. Maybe I should wear my glasses before I start spouting off numbers. I see 5,000 for contractual services, and then I saw the construction for the 100,000, and it just made me like stop and say, where's the rest of it? Or where did that come from? And where's the 50? So
We still have that fund also that houses all the money for the golf course that we had prior to signing the agreement with the management company.
okay.
So that's where those funds would come to and what they also provide each month. So.
I guess to follow, because I noticed the same thing, that it looks to be about 15,000 in revenue based on the budget that I'm seeing, unless I'm missing a big chunk of it, and 105,000 in expenses. So that's a negative 90 by my book. So how, I mean, I thought that the golf course was revenue positive to the town. That does not seem that way. So
Well, we also have a very, I don't want to say very large, but we also have a cash balance that's just been sitting there for when the management company took over. We didn't push all those dollars over to the management company. They're sitting there, and that's part of what we're going to utilize for some of these projects that they're going to be doing.
So this is just like a cash flow. This isn't a fund balance. Do we have the fund balances anywhere from non-DLGF or?
I don't have the fund balance with me right now, no.
Okay, I'd probably like to see that as well, please.
I can help add a little bit more information to that. Jared Logsdon, Superintendent of Parks and Recreation. So the Zionsville National approached the park board a meeting or two ago requesting capital match funds so that they could develop a pavilion with restrooms for the back half of the golf course. If you've ever golfed at Zionsville course, you realize that restrooms are much needed, and having accessible restrooms somewhere on the course is a huge improvement from where we are with our building from the 60s. So they requested those funds, and that was approved by the park board. So that cash match was built into the budget. So they are, per the contract, available and able to request matching funds. And so this is simply utilizing those cash reserves for that capital project, because ultimately that'll be an asset for the golf course, even should we resume operations out there. And the $5,000 is just miscellaneous for capturing any invoices that were not anticipated that wouldn't fall to the contractor, and the town would still have to pay. We just had some invoices from testing the wells and things like that were captured after the lease was signed, but for the period before that. So just anticipating any of those things that need cleaned up.
so in a year where there won't be a capital project, which I'm assuming there will be plenty of those years going forward, it'll be cash positive to the town, in those other years. And we don't have to deal with the headache. That's where they come in. It's just, it won't be as much as it would if we were running it.
Absolutely.
Got it.
Yep.
thank
And
you.
all those funds that they're requesting were generated from the golf course. So it's truly still a self-sufficient model.
Perfect. Makes sense.
Jared, did you say the facilities would be on a well? Is that what you mentioned?
They are and continue to be on well service.
So a septic field would be necessary for?
That exists as well.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
So when I'm looking at this first page, it said the 2024 budget. In the top left corner, it says the 2025 budget request, and do you know what I'm looking at? I should probably be more clear. This page on Exhibit A, I'm seeing 2024 budget, so I thought that was the amounts from this current year and for revenues, but
These are estimated 2025
so that's just a
revenues.
typo then.
Yes.
Okay, that makes me, that's why I was so confused. I was like, I can't follow what you gave me, but okay. Okay, so that makes more sense to me. Okay, so, but then in that manner, why did I think that there was a larger revenue share from the golf course? Did I miss that? Was there not going to be a larger revenue share? Was 15 what we made this year?
Well, I want to
After-
say, and Jared, you might need to help. I want to say that there's a couple different things that are going on with this, and part of it is getting the monthly amount. Because what we did was we started with doing a monthly amount based off of an annual of 50,000. If they go over the 50,000 in revenues, then we'll, even that out. They'll owe us more than that because it's based on a percentage, whichever's higher, percentage or the 50,000. As far as the 15 that you had put in there, I'm not sure where that part's coming from.
I believe that's just a typo. So as mentioned, the minimum would be $50,000 or 10% of greens fees for the season. So it'll be at minimum $50,000.
So that second line should actually be a 50,000 instead of 15?
That is
Is that where I am?
that is not located within the appropriate fund either. 2211, that shouldn't have a golf course line. That is our parks non-reverting operating. That's our recreational programming throughout the park system.
Okay, so I think this is incorrect.
I think if anything,
Exhibit A.
the name might have been transposed incorrectly, and that line just needs to be adjusted with a different title.
So that's not the golf course at all.
Correct.
So where is the golf course?
It doesn't appear that revenue is listed on this exhibit.
And I apologize that I'm only asking you questions in the meeting with the holiday. This is just the way it happened for my review, so sorry. So I think we need another exhibit A.
I can get that to Amy tomorrow.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate it, Cindy.
Cindy, since there's so much conversation about the golf course, can we also, when you send that to us, let us know what's in that fund balance
Yes. Yeah. Mhm.
for the capital projects,
Yes.
please?
I guess the question I've got, I mean, I don't, obviously this is a first reading. So assuming we get everything we need between now and the next meeting, we
I mean,
can.
I can meet with
we
you
can
and
do
we can
that.
go over more of it.
I guess I am curious too, as we start looking at some of these, not knowing, there's a couple things that kind of jump out to me, and Cindy, some of these might be really easy answers, and Jared, you might have easy answers for these as well. I guess I'll start with just the transfer from the Zionsville EDA TIF districts. And are we holding that and we just send that to the RDC, or is that how that works? You've got an account for that and then you just send it to the RDC?
So the transfers that are showing other, so those are all bond payments because the majority of the bond payments that are made by RDC, there's a transfer outline and that we use, and that goes into the appropriate fund where the payment is made from. So they're just like providing the funds for the payment. So that's what that transfer is.
But if it's not under a bond, like, so for example, the Park District Bond Series, that's under a, no, it's not actually a different one. The Zionsville EDA TIF District doesn't show bond, it just shows a transfer of 87,697. And
Fund
then,
4445.
and then like same thing with the Oak Street EDA Fund 4446, $250,000. Are those just, is there a bond associated with it? It's
Yes.
just not listed?
Right. Yes, those funds, we have to budget them, showing them coming out, and the transfer line is the way we do that. Like Oak Street, for instance, That's 125,000 each payment towards the town hall lease. And so they're all bond related and all have bond ties to those transfers. The only one that doesn't have a bond tied to it is the EMS transfer.
Right.
And that's, we move those dollars over to the fire department operating.
And then the other two that I had questions about were, as was, everybody kind of started talking about parks. The park impact fee, new and old, has about
Yes.
$2.6 million worth of budgeted items here for construction.
Yes.
Do we know what those construction projects are?
Yes, so in the 2025 budget, we began design on the Carpenter Nature Preserve Phase 1, as well as the Mulberry Fields concession stand. So those impact fees would be utilized for aspects of each of those projects.
Do you know how much of each one of them would be? So like $2 million from the old park impact fee and 600,000 for the new. Do we
Yes,
know?
so for the Mulberry Fields concession stand, we are anticipating 1.2 million. And for Carpenter, the restrooms with the pavilion, we are anticipating 814,000. We don't have the exact number on what the 2022 fund will fund out of Carpenter, but that has identified that we can utilize it for parking spaces and rustic trails within the site. So impact fees are highly regulated and can only be utilized for certain amenities in the park system. So this is allocating those funds so we can use them for components of projects that they aren't applicable for.
So this is actually starting construction on Carpenter, which
Yes.
is phase 2, not phase 1, because phase 1 was the bond acquisition, and then
Phase
now this is phase 2.
Phase 1 of construction, utilizing the grant proceeds and other sources like this, is putting in the infrastructure to get the road, so people can drive in there, the restroom, as well as a trail system. And then other amenities on site were sponsored by donors from the Zionsville Parks Foundation. So there will be an amphitheater and 1 or 2 outdoor classrooms as well.
Okay, but when I use these numbers, now knowing that it's 25 and not 24, I see a deficit of $8 million. Can you talk to that?
I can't talk to 8 million, but I can talk to the park impact fees. So impact fees have been collected since 2012 when that fund was established. The proper way to really utilize impact fees is for each capital project you have coming forward, you utilize them where you can. Because again, as I mentioned, they can only be utilized for levels of service listed in the ordinance that established them. So the fact that we still have 2012 impact fees on the books made it extremely challenging to utilize those funds. And I don't know if there's a precedent for identifying how to utilize those funds if they don't have a service level they can be applied to. So through our due diligence and our master planning in 2023, we created a impact fee utilization plan. So a consultant reviewed the ordinance, reviewed the amenities coming in the 5-year master plan and identified where they could be utilized. So that's exactly what we're doing right now. So trying to get the 2012 off the books, utilizing all those funds, and then moving on to the 2022 funds.
And who reviewed this? You said a consultant?
So Runsdell, Ernstberger and Associates reviewed the impact fee ordinances that are established in 2012 and 22. And that information was baked into their RFP for the services of developing our 5-year master plan.
And our legal reviewed it and was comfortable with that plan? Do we review that as legal? Do you? Do you? One of the two of you?
To be the Parks Board attorney,
Okay.
yeah.
But
I'm-
we
but-
sign off on it, right? By approving the way it's spent?
The appropriations, yes.
Okay. I'm not comfortable with an $8 million difference in the numbers.
You have to take into consideration that there are some bond proceeds in here that's a one-time, we get the bond proceeds, but we have to appropriate them to use them. So you're not going to see revenue coming in for those every year.
We see them going out, but we don't have the fund in the income. We just have it in. And so that's why the balance of the funds would be helpful to also have, so we could see where the funding is coming from.
I can just send you a full fund report. Yes.
You see, I mean, we're just trying to make sure that in the grand scheme of things, when you take the DLGF budget and the non-DLGF budget, that combined, we're not going backwards by $8 million or more. And so to Sarah's point, I would also, I mean, we need to see, if we're not going to see the revenue piece, we should at least have as a footnote for us to be able to understand, here's where the monies are coming from that are going to cover that deficit. Because at first glance, that gave me great trepidation.
That's why I was really confused when I was asking for the comparative of the numbers, because I wanted to see how it worked before, because I couldn't wrap my head around it when I was looking at the 24, didn't see the 25, but
Mhm.
obviously we've gone over that, so I'll just have to get with you in the next week to have more clarity. Thanks.
I can speak to the impact fees. So the 2012 impact fee, the revenue won't ever increase anymore because we have a new impact fee that's in service. So now for every building permit that's pulled, that roof is counted in that calculation that they pay that impact fee. So the 2012 pot is all the development that occurred until we had the updated impact fees established, and now we're collecting into that kitty.
Do you know how much that balance is offhand, since that's an amount you're drawing from?
2,014,000 and some odd change. So the goal is to allocate the entirety of the 2012 funding and then a portion of the 2022 funding, which will continue to grow until 2027 when we would adopt a new impact fee for the park system.
Okay, you said three things. You said the Mulberry concession was starting for 1.2 million, and you said the Carpenter, I don't know exactly, you said building.
Carpenter Nature Preserve Prairie Pavilion with restrooms.
Okay.
Jared, could you hold on one second? We got to change out the battery or microphone up here.
Test.
Oh, that was quick.
So, but then you mentioned the roads and other parts, and I heard him say phase 2 versus phase 1. Are we in phase 2 by building the Carpenter restrooms and pavilion?
We have been utilizing the language that phase 1 of construction was this basic infrastructure. We haven't defined what phases 2A, 2B, 3, 4, and 5 will be in the future because that's kind of unknown. It'll be opportunity based. So our plan was to design the first phase of construction within our available funding and get it open so people can start having experiences out there.
It just makes me really nervous to not have things kind of black and white, and with me being able to see the numbers. I'm very numbers driven, so you guys know that. This feels very easily fixed if you gave me the information. So again, I'm sorry that the holiday affected previous conversations, but
So this construction going to Carpenter is not part of the original bond. The original
Correct.
amount of money that was awarded to the parks a couple of years ago. This is beyond the $5 million or whatever it was that.
Yes, so the goal of the bond was simply to acquire the land and to begin the design of that. So with the Next Level Conservation Trust grant and the Landwater Conservation Fund grant, we have the opportunity to utilize those grant proceeds towards the construction of the preserve. And we've communicated that out to the public and been very forthcoming that that's what we desire to use those grant proceeds and our resources for.
are there other things that you would have normally needed to use your resources for? Like, are we going to run into a situation where you don't have the money for projects you do alongside that? Or is the budget pretty solid other than this missing $8 million?
Again, it sounds like the $8 million is from other funds outside of parks. So I just want to speak to the utilization of impact fees, and this is how we prioritized the use of those. So Mulberry Fields is one of our most activated parks, so we wanted to have a year-round restroom there and a concession stand to support the operations that go on there. But to your question, we are identifying opportunities to support the entire park system and not just one park over the other. So just like this year, moving forward with the Turkey Foot Bridge replacement and, looking into our 5-year master plan to make sure we are maintaining our entire inventory throughout the park system.
Has the decision on the bridge been made so that we don't make a correction to something that would have to be corrected right after we fix it, or are we just moving?
We are
forward?
moving forward with improving the safety on the bridge by necessitating the scope of work we originally released with our advertisement for that project. And to that, Sarah, I've been in close contact with Brad about that and updating along the way, and we're aligned on kind of how that'll proceed.
Good, thank you.
All right, before we get too much further along here. This is a public hearing.
You have a proof of publication.
Yeah, this is a public hearing. I've got proof of publication. So at this point, I'll open the public hearing. If there's anyone from the public who'd like to comment, seeing none, I'll close the public hearing. Any other questions or comments for Cindy or anyone else for that matter? Otherwise, I would entertain a motion. I would tell you that I'm not personally in favor of approving this because of a lot of the questions that other counselors have, including from my perspective, what I go back to 2 years ago, specific to the Carpenter Nature Preserve and how the initial first phase was just simply getting the bond and prepping and using those proceeds to prep the land. I realize Jared mentioned that they're not using language of phase 1 and phase 2, but clearly there is language of phase 1 and phase 2, and even on the website there. Certainly supportive of the Mulberry Fields project. That's something that I hear a lot about and, you know, rests squarely in my district. So that's certainly something I'm supportive of. But I would echo a lot of the similar sentiments as this council. I mean, I realize we got to introduce this and we've got to, we maybe get this thing shored up a little bit over the next couple of weeks, but
We can make any changes we need to as long as it's less than what was advertised. We just can't go over what was advertised.
Is with the consideration of the sewer rate ordinance, is that in the number, is that anticipated in the number of the wastewater operating income? Because that would be higher if it wasn't included. So that would be.
No, it was based on current.
So should it be based on if we can't go higher? Am I saying that right?
well, we can't, I mean, they can't,
Yeah,
we can't
we can't.
budget for it if the ordinance doesn't get approved.
Right.
So that's,
There's. Mr. Lance in the back was.
But shouldn't it be higher if we hope to go higher, if it can be lower if it doesn't approve? Am I saying that wrong?
And this is,
well, I understand what you're saying, because obviously these are not to exceed numbers. But if you put a not to exceed number that includes this ordinance that's up here and it doesn't get passed, then
Then we would just fix it with a lower number.
so this is also, it's an appropriation ordinance. So it's not really accounting for all the revenues in. It's just what you're appropriating out in expenditures. So if the new sewer rate increase ordinance is approved, you'll still be banking those additional revenues. You're just not going to be spending them. And one of the things I know that I think Lance plans to talk about is, you know, and kind of previewed at the last meeting is planned capital improvement, infrastructure improvements, you know, in the wastewater treatment plant. And so those will be things that will probably take some time. They'll have RFPs and other things before expenditures were to come back, and they can always be additionally appropriated.
Okay, then I have one more question. And with the wastewater, is it reflecting the increase in the trash fees for 2025? Because that would be an increase, because doesn't that go up?
Yes.
So is that reflected in this number? Since I have no comparative number, I don't know. I could look it up, but.
Any other questions from counselors?
Lance, you were going to say
I
something.
didn't know if you were waiting for me to chime in or not, but yes, because that is predictable and already adopted rate increase, it's contemplated with revenues and expenses and trash accounts.
Those are all my questions.
Any questions from counselors?
I'm okay in introducing this, Jason. I think there's some questions and some things that, so there's some color that needs to be added to this for, at least for me to be comfortable with it. But I'm okay. I would suspect that that'll be managed over the next couple of weeks, and then we can talk about it publicly, obviously, just to make sure that the public knows what's going on as well.
Right.
That a motion?
I will make a motion. It was not, but I will make that motion since I put myself out there. I move to introduce ordinance 2024 on first reading. Sorry, that's the sewer. Ordinance 2024-42 on first reading.
Got a first from Counselor Stein,
Second.
a second.
Can I have a discussion for a second?
Well, hold on a second. Let me record. Was that McElderry? Was Counselor McElderry's the second? And-
Oh, I thought I had to
Sure,
discuss
go
between
ahead.
the motion and the second. Sorry. It's okay to approve on introduction because we are asking for them, and you seem very aware that we're asking for you to make a lot of changes and clean up or whatever.
Yes.
And
Well,
I think we followed.
Yeah,
Okay.
we're just introducing though. We're not.
That's fine.
approving,
I
so it's
just,
a first,
I wouldn't want to vote for
Yeah.
something that I know I'm not gonna vote
Yeah.
for. So without changes,
No doubt.
then I'm not voting for this.
Yeah.
But as an introduction.
So I have a first from Counselor Stein, a second from Counselor McElderry. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Motion passes 6 in favor, 0 opposed. I will, Cindy, I'll be sending you an email with a breakdown of a handful of these different areas and where the money's going to be spent. So thank you.
Thanks, Cindy.
Up next is a consideration of an ordinance regarding a sewer rate increase. This is ordinance 2024-43. This is also a first reading, and we have Director of Public Works, Lance with us.
Thank you. You saw a rather extensive budget preparation, looking out on a 5-year horizon at your last meeting, prepared by Crow, the town's accounting company, backed by the recommendation to move forward from the DPW. So tonight you have for reintroduction and first reading, an ordinance amendment changing the sewer rates for the town of Zionsville, recognizing the recommended rates from that study. Just to call out a few highlights. On the second page, you will see under B2, recognizes a new flat residential rate of $56.85 per month. Above that, our commercial or non-residential users are charged a base rate, and then they are billed by consumption. Obviously, a business can be a small boutique shop, a business can be a huge manufacturing company, so we recognize the wide disparities in the usages of commercial applications. Furthermore, turning towards page 3 and subsection C, you will see that the language was in there, included at your direction to commit to looking at this rate at least once every 4 years. And finally, in section 5, there is currently an effective date of January 1st. We want all these rates to hit on the first of a month because proration in our billing system really is impossible. So we want to keep this to a solid month billing. And of course, this is billed in arrears, so residents will not see this hit their mailboxes, inboxes, et cetera, until the 1st of February, which will give the town time, an additional month to raise awareness of this forthcoming rate change. So I have with me the same team that was here last meeting. If you should happen to have any questions. Unfortunately, Jennifer Wilson with Crow could not make it tonight due to some road conditions. Clearly outside of Zionsville, everything is just fine.
It was a lot better.
Just
when I-
fine right here.
Thank you for saying so.
So she is listening in. I know we no longer promote people from remote audiences, but she is listening in. If any questions arise, we'll make a note of those and follow up with any additional information that you may like to have. So with that, I would entertain any questions you have. This is a first reading. Should you choose to introduce for the first reading, the subsequent meeting will be a hearing on this matter. It will be advertised tomorrow, sent to the newspaper. So happy to answer any questions you may have.
Lance, I have a couple of questions for you real quick. Under B2, we talked about the residential users, one dwelling unit, flat sewage rate. I had, somebody contact me about this issue in terms of why. So first, my question first is this a flat sewage rate for every single residential unit in the town, or those that are, quote, connected with the municipal sewage works or other discharges, sanitary sewage, industrial waste, so on and so forth? So my first question is, does it apply to every single home in the town, the flat sewage rate?
All single-family residential is charged a flat rate.
Okay. Perfect. And then second, is there any feasibility or any way to conduct this on a share, instead of doing it like on a consumption base rather than a flat rate? For residential owners, that's what I'm asking.
We're going to speak purely to residential applications now. History has borne out that that is a flawed system. The town used to have that type of a billing system where there was a residential flat rate, and then your bill changed by how much water you used, and the assumption as a surrogate was how much water you sent to the wastewater plant. That was fraught with issues and resulted in a lot of customer frustrations. First of all, we rely on citizens' water then to provide us residential readings. At best, they commit to obtaining those quarterly. There were many people that were not read for months and months and sometimes years. So we're at the mercy of bad data. And we're also at the mercy of how they export their data, then trying to manage that, importing into our data for us to calculate those changes. So it was wisely determined 2 rate changes ago by the town to move away from the variable rate and go to the flat rate. Not just because of all the billing issues, and I can speak from experience. I did receive a $700 water bill at my house and then an $1,100 sewer bill 20-some years ago. It took my time to untangle that on both ends. It also would increase our administrative costs. So if we went to a variable rate, we'd have to go back and look at the rate study because we'd increase our staff time. We have to reintroduce sprinkler credits. In the summertime, we have a lot of people who irrigate, so they have to come in each and every year, apply for their sprinkler credits, and then we give them a variable, I'll say variable flat rate, because then you got a bunch of houses with a bunch of different flat rates. Because you look at that house's rates in the, say, like October to March timeframe when there's no irrigation, and you assume that's their normal average monthly rate, then you bill those through the summer months at that average flat rate. It's a lot of work on the part of the ratepayer because they got to come in next year to make sure that they get their sprinkler credit. So, the billing is a nightmare. And we're subject to bad data. A lot of times things don't get read and people are billed an estimate by the water company. And if that goes on for 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 months and they're significantly underestimating, all of a sudden people get hit with a big bill and they don't know why, because all of a sudden my bill went from $20 to $60 in water. And then the wastewater bill then increased commensurately. So that, and I speak from first-hand experience. I was here when we had that rate structure. It was not easily administered by the town. Plus, we have to buy the data from the water company. So sometimes it's not good data. We still got to buy it from it. So we would immediately increase our administrative costs, and that would be reflected in a higher rate. And the other consideration too is that wastewater treatment, speaking now purely residential, okay, commercials, they can really change some numbers and some operating costs, right? But from a residential, it's really predictable. So we know that, if you look at the math, and I geek out sometimes and I thought, what is this per dollar or per gallon? So if you take your residential rate and you assume, for anybody who's heard some of these talks before, we average 310 gallons per household per day of effluent. And we can kind of use that then as your surrogate for your water consumption. So if you figure 310 gallons per day per household, you take a 30-day month, you're at 9,300 gallons of effluent. And you take that rate, simply divide that, and you get basically a 0.6 cents per gallon-ish value to the treatment cost of treating per gallon down at the micro level. But given that most costs are fixed, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if you go out of town, you use a little bit less water. If half the town goes on vacation, the blowers are still running. The plant is still operating at 100% consumption for electricity. We don't see cost savings. We don't save costs because flows decrease. And that's evident every, July, August, when we get our really low flows, because it's dry, we don't get utility savings. People don't work less, so our costs are really largely fixed. And this was part of a conversation that was had when the town went away from that variable billing rate. And 2 superintendents ago, they kind of landed at the 80% fixed costs, right? You always have stuff going through there. You're always paying your bills. You're always running your pumps. You're always running the plant. We can't dial it back, you know? These are not variable control things. It's on or it's off. So it's got to be on. So really, if you take, you go back to that 0.6 cents per gallon, and you say, well, let's say 75% is fixed cost, just to make my math easier as I'm kind of going on the fly, right? It's dangerous because the principle may be flawed and the math may be flawed. But if you take 25% of that as a variable expense of that 0.6 cents per gallon, you're down at 0.15 cents per gallon of kind of your variable costs. So for one day, you cut your consumption by 100 gallons, nearly a third of your 310 gallon per household average. It's 15 cents a day, so it really, when you look at the fixed cost versus what can actually be a variable cost, it's so small, it's not worth the effort. We won't make it up. We will overperform in having to manage such a complex building system.
That was a good explanation.
A very good one.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I'm sure there are math people at home going, wait a minute, but that's
Councilor
that's
Norris,
kind of my simplistic look.
Don't you have
at
four
things.
Good for
children?
people to hear that because, when it comes to pennies, it's not worth the efforts that they'd have to come to get their sprinklers justified or any of that.
Right.
So,
And it's not just saving 15 cents. You go at 100 gallons over per day, you're adding up 15 cents. So, it goes both ways too.
yeah, and then administrative costs also is a good thing to point out. Thank you.
Do we currently purchase the information from water companies? You said we don't do that now?
Only for the commercial reads, only for
the
commercial
reads.
properties.
Are there any other questions for Lance? Again, this is first reading of this ordinance.
I guess I'd just like to say, I appreciate that we had the discussion that we had 2 weeks ago. That was really nice to be able to go through all of that. Makes it that much easier tonight to vote to introduce the bill or the ordinance. So thank you for that.
Got an exceptional team. I'm up here, but they're always right there with me. So
Thank you for that.
All right. If there are no other comments or questions, I would entertain a motion.
I will make a motion to introduce ordinance 2024-43 on first reading.
First from Counselor Norris,
Second?
second from Counselor McElderry. Are there any other comments or questions? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Motion passes 6 in favor, 0 opposed. Up next, we have a consideration of an ordinance establishing a disability committee. This is ordinance 2024-44. This is also a first reading. We have Deputy Mayor Justin Hage with us this evening and Tom Easterday as well.
Thank you, President Plunkett. I wanted to say thank you and echo Representative Cash's comments to thank my predecessor, Kate Swanson, for getting this started. Also want to say, similar to the pizzazz ordinance, appreciate the patience from the public as we had the budget and lots of other matters that came before this council that we wanted to make sure we're taken care of. But really appreciate comments from Representative Cash and from Lauren, and we'll take those into consideration as we look at the ordinance a little bit closer. I would like to introduce Tom Easterday, who is a very much respected member of our community. And since this really is a group that is made up of members of the public to advise the town on policies, infrastructure, different things that we do as a town to make ourselves more inclusive, I wanted to give him a little bit of a opportunity to talk about the ordinance and similar efforts around Central Indiana. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Justin. Mr. President, members of the town council, by way of introduction, I think I know all of you, but I've lived in Zionsville for over 35 years, former member of the town council. And also by way of introduction with regard to my background with regard to individuals with disabilities, I am a former commissioner on the Indiana Disability Rights Commission. It's actually officially the IPAS Commission set up by Congress, it's the Protection Advocacy Services Council. Each state has one. and served on the Indiana Disability Rights Commission, as it's called, that oversees disability rights in Indiana. I'm also a former chairman of the Central Indiana chapter of the March of Dimes. I currently serve as the chairman of the board of IU Health. I'm also the president of the Zionsville-based nonprofit ILAD, which is independent living for adults with intellectual and developmental disabilities. And I've had the pleasure of coaching Special Olympics athletes for the last 25 years here in Boone County. So I'm here to support the, to urge you to support the adoption and the introduction tonight of ordinance 2024-44, establishing the Zionsville Advisory Committee on Disability. According to data from the Census Bureau and the CDC, about 19% of Indiana's total population has a disability. Now, if you apply that same 19% to Zionsville's population, about 32,500, then there may be over 6,000 residents of Zionsville with a disability. Of course, many more individuals with disabilities work, visit, and shop in Zionsville every day. Ordinance number 2024-44 establishes the Zionsville Advisory Committee on Disability, and it will reinforce to Zionsville residents with disabilities and those with disabilities that work, visit, and shop in Zionsville that Zionsville is and will continue to be a welcoming community for the disabled, and that we recognize people of all abilities as vital members of our town. Now, several other communities in Indiana, including our neighbors in Carmel, Fishers, Noblesville, and Lawrence, along with several larger cities in Indiana like Fort Wayne, Indianapolis, Evansville, and some smaller towns too, for example, Dyer and Monticello, have already created similar committees to the one that you're reviewing tonight for adoption. Now, each of them has recognized that not only the importance of such committees to their residents, their workforce, their employers, and their visitors, but also the importance to economic development efforts and to securing certain grant funding from the state and federal government. It should be noted that this ordinance creates an advisory committee. It is not another layer of bureaucracy or potential impediment for those seeking the town's approval. It will not have any rulemaking or regulatory authority, nor will it have its own budget. As outlined in the ordinance, the Zionsville Advisory Committee on Disability is being created to help provide strategic input, guidance, and advice to the mayor and town council, primarily at the request of the mayor and town council, and to work with individuals with disabilities, community partners, and the town to develop ideas and strategies that enhance needed employment opportunities, housing options, and transportation resources for individuals with disabilities. I'll stop there. I'll just say I firmly believe that Zionsville Advisory Committee on Disability will be a valuable asset for the town of Zionsville, and I do urge your adoption of the ordinance. Be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Tom, and Justin, are there any questions from counselors?
I did questions, Mr. Easterday. Very quickly, so we heard from Representative Cash and Lauren here regarding the makeup of certain boards. The surrounding communities that you discussed, did you do any investigation as to the makeup or the how they're composed in terms of, do they have any requirements for people with disabilities? Because my only question, and this is probably more of a legal question, but I don't know how that works in terms of if we have to spell out for discrimination purposes that we only want people or with, how do they do it in other communities?
Yes, and I did review all of the ordinances from all the communities that I mentioned tonight.
Awesome.
And actually ours, the one that's proposed tonight, the language is almost identical to Fisher's and their ordinance. I will say with regard to the suggestion of having the advisory committee be all individuals with disabilities, the Indiana Disability Rights Commission, which I said is set up by the federal IPAS legislation, that is not all people with disabilities. There is a requirement that there be a certain number on the commission, but it is not. And the reason for that is they want to have people with different expertise and backgrounds. They also want to have and occasionally you'll have vacancies. And I know there was a problem, frankly, with the Indiana Disability Rights Commission when we had vacancies because we didn't have enough people with disabilities apply. So rather than have the commission go without people seated, they were able to fill those seats. So also in this case, you do want the mayor to have discretion. I know in speaking with the mayor, it's his intent certainly to have people with disabilities on the committee. I mean, obviously. And I think all future mayors will be under that same obligation and pressure too. It does state in our ordinance that individuals with disabilities is one of the options. There's nothing from keeping the mayor to appoint all 5 people with disabilities. But at the same time, he may look to have certain expertise represented and may also want to caution against not having enough people interested in the positions.
And I was just going to share with the council, when we were reviewing this ordinance, one of the things we wanted to do is add the language, residents that with lived experience, such as, for really the same reasons that you just articulated. Also having caregivers, a lot of communities have found that caregivers have important input because they're the ones navigating streets and sidewalks and obstacles with their loved ones, or running into barriers when they're trying to get services. So that was another reason that category, I think, was included. But also just to make sure that there's flexibility in terms of who might actually be applicants and who might bring different experiences from time to time to the committee. That's why it's a little bit broader, but I want to echo those comments. We felt like that was a necessary flexibility for appointments.
I actually met with Representative Cash over the phone, but we had talked about her desire to write in the ordinance that someone with a disability had to be on the commission or the advisory committee, however we're wording that. My pushback on her was that I feel that's a level of bureaucracy in a way, that if we have to be defined to be on it, that then we've made another layer where now we have to have someone tell us what their disability is. We have to make sure they fit what we're looking for. And I think, being that this is an advisory committee, I think that a better fit might be that they hold a meeting, like some sort of town hall for those with disabilities to come so that they get feedback from the direct people dealing with um, the issues that we might have in our town. I am a mother of someone with a learning disability, and a lot of people in town know him. And I thank everybody for being an extra set of hands and an extra set of eyes. And I recognize that someone like me would be good on the committee because I think with him. I don't just think for him. I think about what he does, but he wouldn't be able to express that as a need. And so if we were to exclude me or someone like me from the committee, I think we would be missing a dimension that would make better decisions as well. I definitely think the feedback from people with disabilities is very important, because you're right. You mentioned that sometimes someone comes in with a different perspective or a different mission on why they want to be involved in something. And that's unfortunate. But I really do think that adding a layer of defining what people are is something I would stay against, because I just really think that's adding a layer of government where this is supposed to be something that's adding to our layer of government, giving us advice and insight. And I would only, again, recommend that we have some sort of town hall for people to have direct contact with this advisory committee to make sure that all voices are heard.
I've spoken with Teresa Coble, who is a town council member in Fishers, regarding their ordinance, spoke with her several times about it. And the reason they put in that flexibility into their ordinance was exactly the reasons that we've just discussed. So I totally agree with that. I think also she reflected that they are representing certainly some of the needs of individuals with disabilities in the community, but that's not the only function. And I think you pointed that out. There are other functions that the mayor or the town council may want advice on, and having that broad expertise is beneficial. If it happens there are 5 people with disabilities and they can fulfill that expertise, that's wonderful. But that may not always be the case.
I think it's great that we're doing this, and I do appreciate Justin and Tom. I appreciate your continued efforts to represent those 6,000 people that we see all around town that do need an extra voice. So that's where we come in. So when you need the motion, let me know.
Are there any other questions from counselors or comments? I would point out is just a couple of things as we listened to comments earlier. I'm assuming this would be a similar process for folks to be appointed to this board as they are with our current boards and commissions, meaning there is an application process that they would go through. Amy, Lacy, is that everybody shaking their head? Yeah, so.
For the record, yes.
Yeah, yeah. So I mean, I think that's important, right? Just because it does show that, you know, there is a formal process, you know, for that appointment, just like there are other boards and commissions. So.
If you'd like one of those applications, you can visit the town's website under boards, commissions, and
Indeed.
I think, right? Right, Amy? It's right there on the
right.
website.
Yes, it's on the website. The
And-
easiest thing to do is just go to, it's how do I, and then it's listed, submit application for boards and commissions. And then it comes up with the form that you can fill out, and then that goes directly to me.
Perfect. There we go.
One
Yeah.
last comment. You mind?
Yeah, go ahead.
So I'm hesitant to say this, but I, you know, as somebody that's battled a learning disability all my life, I'm actually excited to see this come forward here in Zionsville. And I believe whether it's physical or mental disabilities, I feel like, you know, acknowledging what it is isn't necessary so much as being part of the solution as we move forward. So I think that's, you know, I was hesitant to kind of say that, but I think it's important that, you know, all calibers of people can have different disabilities, whether it's physical, mental, or learning, like mine. And I think that, you know, we struggle with it at different levels. And I think that having a committee of people, whether they're business people, as you may have mentioned earlier, Ms. Lauren, and or whether it's somebody that's involved in town government, or somebody that just wants to express their life story as as somebody with a disability or ability. So I think this is great. I think it's important that the town of Zionsville listens to this group, and I'm excited to support this.
I had one question about, on the composition and the term. It says that the mayor may appoint up to 4 non-voting advisory members who are employed by the town and shall represent their respective town departments. Do any of these ordinances and other, communities provide for a counselor to be on there? I think it's important to hear the voices of Counselor Sampson and Counselor Melton and the perspective that they might be able to provide. And I just wonder if that's something that has been considered, or if that's something that this council would like to consider. And I would assume it would be a relatively easy modification if we decided to go down that path, and whether it's tonight or whether it's over the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, I can tell you Fishers does not have that, and neither does Carmel. I do not have the others with me this evening.
Yeah.
But I can research that for you.
Okay. I mean, I would be, I don't know about you guys, but I think I would be interested in something like that. I mean, again, you guys have perspective that.
Are you suggesting that it be required that a counselor?
No, I think you could, kind of like the mayor it says the mayor may.
Right.
Appoint up to 4. I mean,
Just
maybe,
non-voting.
yeah, maybe we just have, you know, town council
Advisory.
may appoint 1 non-voting.
Yeah.
And it could be a counselor, or it could be someone else. But I mean, again, I think you guys have said some really, I think, impactful things that could be beneficial to this ordinance in this committee. So.
And I should say in Carmel also, they did divide the appointment authority. So the mayor actually appoints 3 and the common council appoints 4 members, but not specifically a member of the common council.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm personally okay with the makeup of the, you know, the appointments. So the mayor has 3 appointments, town council has 2. I just think that over the next couple of weeks, if it's the interest of this council, we might just consider adding a non-voting member on behalf of the council as well.
I could say that.
Will that be a 6th? Is that what you're? suggesting.
just for us, it would just be, we would have 2 appointments and then we would have this extra one, just like the mayor has 3, but he could have up to 4 more non-voting members.
Oh, I see.
But those are staff members, right? Which would make sense because if this committee's making recommendations to various departments, you know,
Yeah, it helps to have the limitations explained when there are suggestions. And I assume that's why the um staff would be advisory members so that it kind of stays in line with what is possible.
Yes, and the other towns that have adopted similar ordinances, they found that they did not obviously want them to be voting members on making a recommendation because of potential conflict there. But they did want their expertise involved in the initial discussions as opposed to waiting until it's at the town council level or at the mayor.
I think, Tom, for that same reason, it might make sense to have a town council member on there.
Sure, and that can be easily
In a
added.
non-voting capacity, because again, you don't want to go through this whole process and then find out somebody from the council maybe isn't on board with it, as opposed to, kind of getting that out of the way in the
Yeah.
beginning.
Or help of communication.
Yeah.
It seems we're finding that it helps to have a counselor kind of with an ear to the ground for different areas.
Absolutely. I know you all have a lot to do, having gone through that experience myself. But absolutely be welcome to have them on there.
Well, I think we probably work on that over the next couple of weeks then. I think we introduce this and we can work on that and any other changes maybe that we may get from the public or anybody else that has insight. I guess if they do, they should direct these, Justin, to you. Is that correct? Council should direct it to Deputy Mayor. Public should also do that. Heather, you want in on this too?
For the council, if you would, I've got this change, but if there are other changes, if you would let me know, you're welcome to let the deputy mayor know, and John Oberlander's working on it, but that way we can redline it and have it prepared for the next meeting.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Any other questions or comments from counselors? Otherwise, I would entertain a motion.
I move to introduce ordinance 2024-44.
Got a first from Counselor Sampson,
Second.
second from Counselor Melton. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Motion passes 6 in favor, 0 opposed. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Oh,
All right. Rapid firing through the end of these here. Up next is consideration of an ordinance regarding political signs. This is ordinance 2024-45. This is a first reading. Heather and I could walk through these, but counselors, you'll recall at the last meeting or a couple meetings ago, we talked about, and I feel like we've talked about this as a council for a long time, just not inundating our voting locations, town hall, et cetera, with a million signs. So this is really kind of cleaning up our sign ordinance for that. Oftentimes when folks don't clean up those signs, our DPW department and facilities people are cleaning them up. So it certainly can be a little bit frustrating for them as well. And, just this would limit our political candidate signs on town hall property and those vote polling locations. Would it also go to the library, Heather, actually?
Right now it just says town hall property.
Yeah. Yeah, we can't do anything there. So it's just town hall property.
Yeah, we talk about the placement of the sign in public rights of way, which we've got already a banner and signs ordinance that's already in place. And so some of the language we've tried to make consistent with respect to removal, for example. But it's old language. We probably need to clean it up. In the current ordinance talks about our clerk treasurer. So these are some of the cleanups we're trying to get through as we make changes. So this would basically say you could have 2 candidate signs at town hall. You could place them 60 days before the election. If you don't remove them 6 days after the election, then the town can pull them with no recourse to the town.
I feel like 2 isn't very much. Like, should we do 3 or 4? We really want 2? We have a big, long line. I mean, just having run it,
We did look at a lot of other surrounding communities to see how they limited signs. And if you think about all the different elections that can be in any given cycle, it's still a lot of signs for a very small strip of property in front of town hall.
Yeah.
There's nothing we can do for the library. It would be kind of a miss, I think, to limit the signs at town hall and still have the library just absolutely jammed with signs like it was.
Can we do it as a whole town?
Well, they might, I mean, they might follow suit. I mean, that's the thing. They might follow suit and I mean, believe me, I've spent a lot of money on signs, but
And I would say real estate is really hard to come by at the library for signs.
Yeah, but they were in every piece of dirt.
Because the real estate's hard to come by.
It was hard not to trip over one.
I know.
yeah.
But if they follow suit, then, that's their prerogative.
Yeah, I mean, I think limiting them here is a big move. Again, this is the first reading, so we can modify it if counselors think there should be, 5 or 7, or if there's an
I don't think
arbitrary
it should
number
be more
beyond
than 3 or
that,
4,
but.
Keep in mind, if site 2 goes, it becomes a building and parking lots. You're talking about that little strip of
Yeah.
dirt. There's not gonna be room for
Yeah,
very many
you can
signs.
still put them out front or.
Oh,
like,
way
I
out
was
by the
originally
road,
Trying to be
yeah.
like 1 out front and 2 back here. Seems like 3. I don't know. But I mean, obviously. It's trash.
Yeah.
Other towns do this.
Yeah, so many other communities already have sign ordinances in place. You can't obviously limit,
That's what I was-
if you have one candidate, you're going to need to allow all candidates. And so we have consistent language throughout, but
And do they say 2 in all the other places?
many communities have 2, 3, 4.
But definitely not 1. If we're gonna talk about adjusting this, because we're just right back to where we were. Right?
I mean, I'm good with 2, but if we decide over the next couple of weeks, we want to move this to 4, we can move it to 4. So same thing. If you got any changes you want to make to this, send it to Heather, send it to myself,
Okay.
and we'll get it out there.
We'll need them just this week because the deadline will be, for the next meeting will be
Right.
the following Monday. So just
Yeah.
let me know by Friday.
All right, any other questions or comments? Then I will make a motion to introduce ordinance 2024-45.
Second.
I got a second from Counselor Sampson. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, same sign. Motion passes 6 in favor, 0 opposed. Up next is a consideration of an ordinance revising the nepotism and conflict of interest rules. And Heather, I'll let you take this one.
Yeah, so we already have a conflict of interest policy and nepotism policy, which applies both to town employees, elected officials in the town, and appointees of the town, which that was changed at the end of last year to bring in those appointments to ensure that they follow the same protocols. This would change to ensure that if you are making an appointment, you cannot have a relative, and we have a definition of relative that is driven by state statute, who is being appointed to a board or commission. So for example, you wouldn't want to have, I'm going to pick on Cindy Poor because she left. You wouldn't want to have Cindy Poor's husband, appointed to the finance committee, correct? And so the definition of relative, I thought you might ask, is a spouse, a parent or step-parent, a child or stepchild, a brother, sister, stepbrother, stepsister, niece, nephew, aunt, uncle, daughter-in-law, or son-in-law. And then if you have a half sister or brother, that's included, or an adopted child's treated like a child. So you're not talking about cousins, in a small community, you start to limit the pool if you take out all the cousins of people that work at town hall. But this really, I think, tightens up the policy and ensures that we've got, good checks and balances for all of our boards and commissions and staff and appointed officials.
Well put. Any questions for Heather? I would entertain a motion.
I'd like to make a motion to introduce ordinance 2024-46.
First from Counselor Melton,
Second.
second from Counselor Norris. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion passes 6 in favor, 0 opposed. The next item on the agenda is a consideration of an ordinance to repeal inactive boards and commissions. This is ordinance 2024-47. Heather can walk through this as well. I think before she jumps in there, I would point out that this is something that we on the previous council tried to do and considered. And we've talked about it multiple times, even in leadership calls here and with the mayor. Just the number of boards and commissions that we have that are not meeting because either there's not a property and it may not be the Perry Township one, but there's not a property in Perry Township, so you don't need that board. Or the bond's paid off, so you don't need it. Or there's a committee that's not statutorily aligned with, with state statute. So we need to kind of rein some of that stuff in. So
Yeah, so really this is just an ordinance that gives the mayor the administrative discretion, if a board is not met for 2 full calendar years, to dissolve that board or committee. It would then require that the mayor provide to Amy Lacy, who serves as the clerk for our town council, a list of any of those boards or commissions that had been deactivated, which would then provide public transparency and notice to all of you. We have, I think the other goal, in addition to what President Plunkett said, is to make sure that when volunteers come to the town and say they want to serve on a board or commission, that they actually get a board or commission that's meeting and that is respectful of their time and energy and effort. So we've had appointments over the last few cycles to boards that haven't met in 8-10 years. And obviously, that isn't fair to the individuals who wish to serve. So I think this really cleans a lot of that up and allows us to look every 2 years with a fresh eye to make sure that something's still needed, still serving its intended purpose, or needs to be reconstituted through an ordinance process or dissolved.
any questions for Heather?
So does it require the mayor to get approval from this council or just
Just provide the list. Yeah.
provide the list?
Mhm.
That's by January 31st of next year, annually.
Right. And so we did exempt the Board of Police Commissioners and the Safety Board. The council's talked about the fact that the Safety Board has not been meeting regularly. We obviously just reconstituted that and talked about it in the context of the merit board appointments. So that is exempted out. Those would remain and not be something that could be administratively dissolved.
I think that's kind of a good point, but we have no say in what can be dissolved?
Well, remember, this is only boards and commissions that haven't met for 2 years.
So my counter to that is non-discriminatory practices committee. Well, it only meets when there's a problem. Right? So I mean,
But it's never had a meeting.
well, it's never had a problem, right? So
But I mean, that's kind of, so that one is one of the reasons we're doing this is because
And I
it's
understand-
not statutorily aligned with state statute. It doesn't have the authority that's within the current ordinance, and it can't execute any of the
Escatory.
investigatory, if they wanted to, right? I mean,
That is correct. And if there's still, for example, doesn't get rid of any of, that's just one of many examples, because we also have boards that we set up for a bond, for example, that gets paid off. We don't always come back and, dissolve that board. We may have the reason we wanted to give discretion to the mayor, in that instance, there may be a bond that's coming up that's going to use the same board, right? But trustee responsibilities require that there be people, checking in on the financials and attesting to the bonds. The non-discriminatory review committee has met one time in its history. It's now 12 years old, I think. It would not, there would still be a process that people could come forward. This has always been kind of the rub with that organization is that, if you have a claim of discrimination against the town, for example, you still have those rights. You have a claim against a private business, you still have those rights. But this sort of had this quasi-governmental structure that really, I don't think aligns to state statute and would not stand up in a court proceeding, and is not met really largely for that purpose, so.
But we're just giving, with this ordinance, we're giving the decision-making back to him.
we're giving the mayor the authority to dissolve any commission or board that has not met for more than 2 years.
Except for the safety board.
And the Board of Police.
And the
Commissioners.
board. Okay. And we could just set up another board if we wanted it. So yeah, that's fine.
Doesn't mandate. It just says if they haven't
No.
met for 2 years.
It's just, okay, just plain like the whole thing out. If we end up as adversaries, I think that is why I wanted to check that. Like, if we end up as adversaries, he can't cancel one of our commissions that we want because it's met in the last 2 years. So,
Yeah, I think, I mean, I think that's a good point. Obviously, we've been through some of that over the last 4 years. And what I would say is if we were in a position where we could call a meeting of these various boards or commissions for no other reason than to just do it. I mean, the safety board, you guys had a meeting the other day to establish officers.
Right.
Right. I mean, I know there was one other agenda item, but you could have called a meeting to establish officers and that checks the box, right? So now you're on a 2-year window. So I think the nice part about the 2 years is it's a long runway. So you can identify if there's a board or commission that, we feel like needs to meet to, kind of get out of that, firing line, then we can certainly do that. But I think for this, the bigger ones for me isn't necessarily just the bonds and the building committees, but it's the ones that aren't in aligned with state statute that I worry about the most. I mean, if
Okay.
something happens, we're in a spot where, to Heather's point, the board wouldn't have any standing in the courts, and we could just be in a weird spot of purgatory where we're going back and forth, and I don't want to have to deal with that.
well, and again, going back to if there's an adversarial relationship and we want a board and that person doesn't want a board, we could pass a board, that person could veto our ordinance, and then we could go back and still vote it in.
In there.
So then we're really still covered by that.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm good.
Yeah.
Heather, I guess my question would be, is there anything that would require the mayor to notify intent to dissolve?
Not currently. It just says that they would create a list of boards or commissions or committees that are administratively dissolved. So if you'd like notification 30 days before dissolution, we could add that in.
I think that's good, because
I like
then we
that.
could quickly meet if there was something that we were battling.
I don't think it's
Not you,
currently an
John.
issue, but
Yeah,
like you
not
said,
you,
Jake,
John, at all.
Call a meeting so that
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have a problem with that.
Yeah, let's add that 30 days. I think that makes it all tied up.
Yeah, I'll redline an amendment and I don't think that'll be a problem. And really that was just language that I put together to help provide the most flexibility, because I think it's also important to give some discretion to the mayor, because there may be something that hasn't met for 2 years, but it serves a specific purpose and it really needs to meet again. And, the administration can share, this is why we didn't do something. And just to give the most flexibility in making that decision to dissolve. But I think, really the goal as well is to make sure that the citizens that come forward and want to serve on a board or commission are getting a meaningful volunteer experience, and that we're not sort of falsely setting up that they're going to serve on something that never meets, and more respectful of their time and energy when they come forward.
Getting rid of government layers that aren't doing a job is great with me.
Are there any other questions from counselors? I would make a motion to introduce ordinance 2024-47.
Second.
A second from Counselor Norris. So those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion passes 6 in favor, 0 opposed. Last item of new business is a consideration of an ordinance amending the Pathways Committee ordinance. This is ordinance 2024-48, also a first reading. Heather, myself, and Counselor Melton certainly can walk through this. You will all recall that we had an amendment to this ordinance earlier in the year, and the part of what we ran into was the progress of yearly objectives and projects that was presented late in the year, or was going to be presented late in the year after the budget had already been established. And after talking with Counselor Melton, and one of the commissioners on there, Gressel, about just, what we should do as it relates to reporting. You'll notice in section 2.7, They will appear before the town council in the second quarter of each year to speak on progress of yearly objectives and projects. I'm sorry, that was, what I drew here. That was section D7. Sorry, I don't know why I said 2-7. Section D7 under responsibilities. So I think that's a big part of it, just getting them in front of the council for ideas and recommendations so that that could be considered for budgetary purposes. Heather, I know there were a couple of other red lines. Is there anything you want to touch on there?
No, I think the others were just non-substantive. The only substantive changes in D7, which is appearing during the second quarter of the year instead of the fourth quarter.
Which makes a lot of sense.
My only comment to that is we have, you're talking about, to the attorney's point of having groups of people from the public volunteer their time on these committees, and then their term is a year, where their term ends December 31st, and then, they're presenting in the second quarter. If they're only going to serve a year, they may not have their opportunity to present their findings. However, I think we can work through that. I just, I felt like that was a little bit of a, this first year was different. We melded two committees together, kind of came into alignment with our objectives through the new ordinance, and I'm okay with this. I think it's great. I think it's needed definitely for the budgetary side of this, which is, really how you get stuff done in this line of work, I guess. So I just was commenting on the time frame that you're on the committee. So
Should it be a school year instead of a calendar year?
well, I don't want to change. I don't know the solution to this, but I just,
Can we have commissions or committees that are not January 1st? Could we have a June 1st committee or July 1st committee?
I think it would, can you? Yes. Would I recommend it? Probably no, just because we've just got kind of a rhythm with all the different commissions and boards.
appointments.
And the appointments. And I think typically, this isn't a statutorily driven committee. So you could change the term. Typically, a one-year term is preferred because you want to make sure someone's showing up to the meetings, right? Particularly if they're a first-time appointee.
We've had very good attendance in this one, so we're not shutting this one down, Mayor. It's been well attended, and that's why I think it's important that we move this forward. However, maybe we could have a discussion. This is only the first reading on it, right?
Yeah, I would also point out, this seems to be Pathways, this committee seems to be a committee that, there's 7 members. And everybody but one wants to come back. So, and
I
we
did notice that.
and
too,
we
yeah.
always give, typically we would give first right of refusal to folks that want to come back. I know that's not always, but, that I think speaks well for that board.
It's a very important committee to the town of Zionsville. Connectivity, right? So.
You make one person a 2-year member? Like the president or whatever is a 2-year member, or do we do something like that to get your overlap?
I think your challenge is you're always going to have, even if you do 2 years, then the third year, they're not going to be presenting their findings. So 1 year, 2 year.
But yeah.
3 year, if your goal is to try to make sure whoever is serving and comes up with the recommendations, presents the findings.
I'll connect with Jared and Lance offline and just kind of see if they have any thoughts on that between now and the second reading, and just see if there's any solutions. That's not a bad idea, Sarah. I kind of like the idea, but also to her point, it's just going to be.
But it's almost like you have to do an A/B. You have 2 people with 2-year terms, but they roll differently.
Sure.
Definitely something to consider in the next 2 weeks.
Yeah, I think if there are any questions or if there's anything that comes out of this over the next couple of weeks, just make sure, those comments and changes get to Heather. And we can certainly consider those. So any other questions or comments? Otherwise, I would entertain a motion.
Like to introduce ordinance 2024-48 on its first reading.
First from Counselor Melton.
Second.
Second from Counselor Sampson.
From everybody.
Any other questions or comments? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed, same sign. Motion passes 6 in favor, 0 opposed. Other matters from counselors?
Just one comment, congratulations to the seventh grade Zionsville All-Stars football team.
Yeah.
Two of those kiddos are kiddos of two of our board members up here, or the council members. They won their Rocky Top National tournament, and it's the first time in their history of going to that tournament that they brought home the big trophy. So that's all I had.
I think that's a neat thing to celebrate because it's an all-star team made from the two middle schools. So it's neat to see the football program already combining in seventh grade and winning a championship.
Are there any other or other comments from counselors? I would say just real quick in closing, we've got 8 new business items here that were introduced on first reading. Okay, so we've got 8 items that almost all of them had some level of discussion. So please, please, please make sure you get comments, concerns, questions to the people who presented them so that these modifications can be made. The next meeting will be the mid-month meeting. And I don't know that we want detailed dialogue on all 8 old business items, you know, when they come up. The other thing I would point out, the mayor mentioned his appointments that he's got. I appreciate the feedback from council. We're working on our appointments as well and should have those finalized this week or at least sent out for communication to the council this week so that we can get that stuff taken care of as well.
I'll try to circulate to the council, maybe by end of day on Thursday, red lines for things that you've brought up. If you have any other things that you want to, you know, have me address, I can do that if you get them to me, maybe by end of day Wednesday. But by Friday, end of day, if you can let me know of any final changes, then we can get them ready for your packet next week.
Yeah, to Heather's point, and maybe even for administration here as well, right? Our deadline for the 16th is going to be end of day on Monday, the 9th. So we need all documents prepared prior to that so that we can review it and have it to council in advance of the meeting with plenty of time. So. All right. Any other questions from counselors or anything else?
I do know the show choirs are doing their big fundraiser with the holiday home tour on Saturday. So there will be a lot of random parking and a variety of neighborhoods. So that's what's going on Saturday.
Right. If there's nothing else from counselors, I will make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
I got a second from Counselor Melton. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, same sign. Motion passes 6 in favor, 0 opposed. The next regular town council meeting is scheduled for Monday, December 16, 2024 at 7:30 a.m. in the Zionsville Town Hall Council Chambers. Final notice will be posted in compliance with the Indiana open door law. Thank you.